Hi, everybody, and welcome to this conversation about what makes HubSpot Content Hub the top choice for B2B websites. I'm looking forward to peeling back the layers and diving into what makes Content Hub such a strong choice for B2B marketers and their websites today. My hope is that everybody watching will come away having learned something new or interesting about Content Hub by the end of the session. If you're watching live and you have questions, please do post them into the comments section on LinkedIn, and we'll try to answer as many as possible at the end. I'm your host, Phil Valander, and I'm excited to be joined today by the one and only Luke Summerfield. For anyone watching who doesn't know, Luke is Director of Product Strategy for HubSpot Content Hub, Commerce Hub, and CRM products. And Luke has been a central figure in the development of HubSpot solutions for website marketing since joining nearly 10 years ago. In my opinion, Luke, if you hope you don't mind me saying that. First, he helps agencies think differently about how to deliver websites, and then joined the product team and helped to shape what Content Hub is today. Before joining HubSpot, Luke worked at several respected HubSpot partner agencies, where he helped them and their clients improve website strategy, user experience, results, and much more. It's great to have you here, Luke. Content Hub, Commerce Hub, and CRM is quite the remit, and I think it might surprise some to hear all of those grouped together, but I'm sure it's done with very, very good intentions.
Well, I'm really grateful to be here. Thanks. Obviously, we go way back, so anytime I get a chance to chat with you, it's great. I think, it goes back to sort of one of the biggest values of HubSpot is that all-in-one. And we see that one of the benefits of having all your stuff in one place, your CRM data, your website, where you're doing transactions, when you bring those things together, and others, right? Service, sales, marketing, you bring those things together, that's where you can unlock a lot of magic. And so having someone who can think across product lines and connect the dots across product lines, there's a lot of value in that. And so that's a lot of what the product strategy team does.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I can imagine. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to talk about the wide range of reasons that HubSpot Content Hub is such a compelling choice for B2B marketers, ranging from some of the less new to the exciting and new and cutting edge, leaving no stone unturned, if that's okay with you, Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And before we dive into those details, I'd nevertheless like to set the scene a little bit of why we think this is an important conversation, get your take on that as well, and explain, why choice of content management system, let's call it, which is more than CMS, I think, nowadays. It's a broader set of requirements and solutions that's needed. Why that's such an important thing. And to my mind, it's because surprisingly, I think to some, the importance of websites in B2B marketing is still continuing to grow. The role and the impact within sales and marketing and growth is still on the rise, because our websites are hosting so much of the content that we use to attract buyers to us in the first place, either in its native format or in repurposed formats elsewhere. But so much of it resides on our website. And of course, they provide the all-important experience where buyers can decide ultimately whether to act on interest and intent to purchase something and convert or not into a lead or a high-intent opportunity or a pipeline even. And increasingly, they're also the places where buyers are actually paying for their purchase and accessing information to do with their purchase after the fact through portals and membership sites and so on. So the role of the website, the role of the underlying technology is vital, and it continues to grow. Would you agree with everything I've said there, or have I missed anything that you think is important?
No, and I'm really glad that you brought up the whole role of the website beyond just lead generation. I think that's an important note that a lot of folks sort of forget about. Of course, as marketers, we think a lot about lead generation, and that's one of our primary goals. But the website can be leveraged as a tool to help the entire company grow, the service team grow, the sales team grow through enablement and portals, even intranets, building intranets for your internal employees to leverage to help them onboard and upskill and have the enablement resources they need. So in my opinion, and I may be biased, I think the website and content in general is more important than ever. especially when you see all the changes that are happening out in the market, and the website being really your anchor as a marketing organization to like anchor on to drive growth.
Yeah, it's while so much in marketing is being continuously disrupted and replaced, and websites, these things that have been around for quite some time now, we still haven't reached peak website importance potentially. And so, investments in this area still need to be made and potentially increased, I think, to get the most out of it. The role is central, vital. It isn't decreasing. It hasn't been replaced yet, which I think is pretty fascinating given the rise of AI and the development of new and other channels and so on. So still a really important area of consideration and investment. And that's why we basically decided to specialize on HubSpot CMS as it was back when it first became available, which I'm going to say was 2013, 2014 is about when I seem to recall
Yep.
we first got our hands on something. And,
Yeah,
we
good
looked at
memory.
what was available at the time and basically saw that HubSpot provided all the features and technologies that we needed to deliver the objective pipeline. Ultimately, at that time, was our focus anyway, and it was part of a connected ecosystem that that could collect and enrich and coordinate communication with prospects to achieve revenue goals. So we had a golden opportunity really to decide, will we specialize in this CMS or this CMS or HubSpot CMS, and we chose HubSpot for those reasons and have not looked back. And it's only got better and it's only got stronger. And that led to Blend going on to become a CMS accredited partner with HubSpot, one of very few globally, and to really specialize in developing websites, user experiences, pipeline generation tools really on this platform. And before we dive into the details of what makes HubSpot so good at helping businesses achieve those objectives, I'm interested to know how you would answer the question that is the title of today's session, if you don't mind, Luke, which is, why is HubSpot Content Hub, or why should it be, the top choice for B2B websites?
I think it goes back a little bit to the market shifts that we're seeing and sort of our vision for Content Hub, with CMS being one of those and websites being one of those critical pillars within your content marketing strategy. If you look at how the market has changed, I mean, we alluded to some of them already. The marketers are having to rethink how they attract where attention is and how they pull attention back into their website, with the changes that are happening with Google, with the rise of Gen Z now in the workforce and the buying preferences of Gen Z and how Gen Zs do their research, with the importance of connection and this one-to-one at scale type of personalization. That's really a new standard on how people buy. Folks no longer want this, one size fits none type of an approach to how they interact with a company. And also, obviously, the rise of generative AI, changing how we think about going about doing our work and where we spend our time. And so, as we thought about that and thought about where the puck is going and how, to use a hockey analogy here, and where, as marketers, we need to adjust and think, that's where, we came to the conclusion that we need to help marketers, adapt to that new reality. And so that's where Content Hub, we sort of evolved CMS Hub into Content Hub, with CMS being and websites being sort of that core pillar functionality, but now adding in additional functionality, things like podcasting, things like remixing content into new formats. And we'll talk about a lot of that, I'm sure. But really, our vision is to have an all-in-one AI-powered content marketing software that helps marketers create and manage content that fuels the entire customer journey. And if I break that down a little bit, the all-in-one, going to your original question of like what makes Content Hub the number one B2B platform, one of those is the all-in-one nature of it. We've seen when you bring together your system of content, your CMS, and pair that and layer that on top of all the rich CRM data that you have on top of it, and supercharge the interactions you have by adding in automation on that same data layer, and mixed with reporting, you unlock a lot of really magical opportunities as a marketer to do things like personalization and lead generation. And so, uh, that's shown in the results when we look at customers who use CMS Hub and host their websites on HubSpot with Marketing Hub. They get double digit, sometimes triple digit improvements in visitors and leads to their website versus
Yep.
Marketing Hub and another CMS. And so that just, again, goes to the all-in-one nature of having all your data in one place, seamlessly, natively connected. There's a lot of magic that gets unlocked. The second is, again, AI powered, the ability to create this content, do sort of the mundane tasks, the mundane processes, be able to do that more quickly to free your time up to think about conversion rate optimization, think about personalization, think about creative, unique experiences that you can't find other places. And that's really hard when you're stuck, just doing the like mundane tasks. And so AI really allows us as agencies and as marketers to think more deeply on some of those things we usually kind of kick the can down the road to actually invest the time into, which is great. And the last couple of things I'll say is we're built for marketers. This is not a developer's CMS. This is not a designer's CMS like a Webflow. Now, that's not to say we have tools for developers, so they're not limited in any way. They can code whatever they want to code. There's tools for designers, so you can design the look, the feel, the animations, the interactivity in any way that you want. But at the end of the day, all of that is to serve marketing teams so that marketing teams can get their work done better and they're not, stuck with gatekeepers to be able to get their work done. It's really to empower the marketing team. So the ease of use, the ability to empower marketers to do their work allows our customers to move a lot faster than, which we know today's day and age, the agility and the ability to move quickly is more important than ever. And the last part of that is what we were talking about earlier. It's really the entire customer journey. I think in the future, it's not just leveraging content and leveraging the website, again, for just lead generation. That's a critical, important part. But we want to build a system that allows marketers to influence not just lead gen, but influence the entire flywheel on behalf of their company. And so that's really what that part of that means.
You've touched on a lot of very interesting points there that I'm going to try and come back to all of them at some point in the discussion. But you've also made me think about something which I think is really commendable, actually, which is in order to go where the puck is going when creating a platform for doing this type of work, there's a whole long tail of pre-existing requirements and necessary requisites that are built in and have to be in order to be able to do those, more customer facing, cutting edge requirements meeting activities and deliverables. And the way I've always thought about the value and the strength of HubSpot's offering in this area is the invisible and the visible. And although I don't want to dwell on it for too long, I think that reminding people, or in some sense, highlighting for people the invisible, the value of what's invisible within Content Hub is worthwhile doing, because the infrastructure that HubSpot has designed, procured, configured, maintained, secured, and provided as a backbone to all of this technology is something that, for the most part, we never even think about or see, right? Which I think is the achievement in itself. But the infrastructure that's provided is one of the key sort of qualities of HubSpot Content Hub, and it helps users, marketers deliver the speed that they need, the reliability that they need, the performance, rounded performance that they need, without ever having to think about it. And so I think that's just something that needs to be said and is worth reminding people that that's a huge part of what's makes up Content Hub and has done for a long time, but remains incredibly important and valuable to HubSpot's customers.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought it up, because you're right. Like, there are a lot of, it can be invisible and it can not be invisible. And what I mean by that is, when we talk about infrastructure, what I mean by that is when it's done well, it's invisible. You don't even think about it. It frees your time up to focus on all the other things. When it's visible, it means something went wrong. Your site got hacked. you're sitting there updating plugins and things are breaking on your site. And so those are all things that become very visible when your website is down, and create a lot of fire alarms and a lot of stress and a lot of focus on fighting with your systems versus focusing on your customers. And so, there is an immense amount of value in having, premium, fully hosted infrastructure, to the point where, you don't have to think about security hacks. You don't have to think about, how do I resolve my site when it goes down? All of that is just really taken care of for you. And that's really a lot of the value that you get when you work on HubSpot in general, but of course, Content Hub, when you have website hosting as like a critical part of that. So, we have all of the premium hosting baked in, SSL, CDN, web application firewall, 24 hours security monitoring, backup, managed backups. We're SOC 2 compliant. We now allow sensitive data to be stored in the system, and we have HIPAA compliance in beta. And so, we're making a lot of strides there. For anyone listening who is in the IT side of things, the technology officer side of things, if you go to trust.hubspot.com, you can dive into all the details and third-party audits on all of that. But for the marketers in the room, I think the takeaway is your time is more valuable than ever. You have to get more done with less resources in the same amount of time. And where do you want to spend your time? Fighting with your systems, or focusing on creating value for your customers and creating really creative, engaging experiences? And, for us, we believe we should just, take all of that off your plate and make it simple and allow you to focus on it. And I would say two other things I'll throw in the hat for the invisible is also just one of the things we pride ourselves on at HubSpot is the ease of use and just the user experience for the folks inside of the app. It's invisible. When you do UX right, it's invisible. And so being able to seamlessly be able to create landing pages and blogs and make changes to your website pages without fighting, moving things around and breaking parts of your templates and having to work through a developer for every little change, all of that just amounts to saving time and being able to move faster. And again, when it's done right, you don't even notice it. And so it's funny because folks like yourselves who have really spent a lot of time in CMS Hub, when they go back and they have to work on another system for some reason, they change jobs, or, for an agency, you brought on a client who's on a Drupal site, you really start to see the contrast between the UX side of things as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with all of that. I think it's, it's worth mentioning all of this because, I still meet plenty of marketers who are hindered by their platform, by its reliability, by their responsibility for its functioning on a day-to-day basis. And that's just unfortunate, right? Because their energy can be invested in so much more valuable ways. And not least to mention, difficulty making edits, like you said. I think, an effective website environment should make editing easy for anybody on the marketing team, and free up the IT and the development resource to do things that really require their expertise on the flip side of that, right? It's a pointless kind of trade of responsibilities in many ways. And to your point about, within CMS selection, I find a lot of preference, strongly held preference for platforms. Familiarity is a strength, so I understand that. But I think HubSpot really is a platform that developers can and should embrace, because you're so open about how you build the infrastructure, and you're so transparent about how it's secured and configured. And that's knowledge that can be leveraged, and that's knowledge that can be used to sort of level up a team, an organization, and a company to tackle the next challenge, right? To already be 10 steps ahead of where you were. And I think the fact that all that information is available on trust.hubspot.com and in other places is a reason to, if you've historically held a preference for another CMS and, dearly prefer it, have a look, see what's available and what's built into this platform, and where that could channel your energy and your efforts. And then from an agency perspective, when we're trying to deliver pipeline results, the speed, the performance, the security, the reliability, the availability, these are just table stakes that are dealt with, taken care of, never to be thought of again. And that allows us to focus on that user experience, that buyer experience that creates pipeline, and not be held back by those other challenges. And I was going to ask you if there's anything coming down the track in this area particularly that people ought to be thinking about or aware of, or that's new in this area. But you've already mentioned sensitive data, which is a very recent announcement that can now be stored inside HubSpot. And so I think it's fair to say that that's a perfect demonstration of HubSpot keeping up with the times and the requirements and evolving the platform, not standing still on that front. And so if there is anything else coming down the track, then by all means share. But I think you've already indicated that, HubSpot's ticking off and knocking down, new opportunities for customers continuously anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking at, we see like things like infrastructure and reliability, speed, performance, reliability as, like you said, table stakes. And it's something that we're constantly investing into. And we have, entire product teams within our organization who are dedicated to that. And so, yeah, there's no shortage of roadmap functionality on their minds right now. Obviously, sensitive data, HIPAA compliance has been a big one. We have other teams that are actively, and have been for the last year, actively investing in improving speed and performance of websites built on Content Hub. And so we've seen, we could go into speed and performance in a whole separate topic. Of course, it's a yin and yang. One yin is how the platform was built and the infrastructure it's on. The yang is how the website was built on top, making sure marketers aren't uploading like 2 megabyte images and things like that. But we're working as a product team to think about both of those. How do we help guide marketers in best practices, sort of do validation on images and flag things if they upload a large image or something like that, or have too many JavaScript triggers on their site. But at the same time, working on improving our own JavaScript engines, on our own CDN configurations for speed. And so there's been a team chipping away at that for the last year, and they're going to continue. And it's been really interesting to see the benchmark data against some of the other usual suspects like WP Engine and Sitecore and Acquia, as we compare customers using those platforms versus CMS Hub and the performance, the on par or exceeded at this point. So that's another area, and there's always stuff that we're, every year we're exploring things like new data centers, things like, expanding into, we always talk about like FedRAMP and federal, that's maybe more on the US side, but thinking about like federal governmental certifications for industries that require that. So we're always exploring.
That sounds great. And the comments you've made on speed, really interesting, because HubSpot CMS, Content Hub, already performs pretty darn well, when benchmarked against other platforms. And we've made it our business to build really fast, performant websites on top of it. So, all green from a Core Web Vitals perspective. Helping customers make the right choices about the media that they use and the user experiences they build and the animations they deploy, because those two things are usually in opposition. But doing more to help users make the right choices, like you mentioned, sounds really positive. And working on platform speed can only take that to, well, who knows where, because as I say, you're already very, very strong in that area. So to be better is pretty remarkable. These websites will be really, really fast down the track. So that's pretty good. But like you said, it's how it's built on top of it that plays a key role once you've got an effective platform behind you. Cool. Let's move on to the visible, the features, the tools that people use every day to build their experiences, build their content out on Content Hub. And again, talk about a range of them, new and less new. And you talked about data, and you talked about the power of having an all-in-one solution where data could be collected and reported on and measured, and how that drives experiences that are personalized, and also, I think, decision-making, right? That's helps you to improve performance. And the thing that came to my mind as you were talking about what that was, I think that humans have a tendency to underestimate the challenge of bridging the gaps between systems that drive, modern marketing. And it's
Just do a
so easy to
Zapier.
say
It'll connect it all. Do a Zapier. You'll be good.
we'll integrate it. But if you want to be able to collect and measure and report on that data, that information, HubSpot Content Hub is a great choice. And having all of that in one place on one tool, I think, is transformational for businesses that use it, and part of the reason why they see such good results.
Yeah, like I said, we've looked a lot at our customer data to see how, at the end of the day, if you're on the hook for visitors and leads, we looked at customers using Marketing Hub with our CMS and content tools versus another CMS, and we again saw double-digit or triple-digit improvements on visitors and leads across the board. And so that was just really like proof in the pudding that when you bring these systems together, it's kind of this. We used to use this term at HubSpot when I first started: the 1 + 1 = 3. When you have your CMS and your customer data in one place, you get a 1 + 1, and it unlocks additional value. And it makes sense. Like anyone who's really tried to fight multiple systems, where you have your WordPress site over here, you have your Salesforce instance and data over here, you have your Google Analytics data, which is all anonymous. You don't know who any of those folks are, sitting over here. It's really hard to draw that through line across all of those, as you mentioned, to make better decisions and to report on the ROI of your marketing efforts, which at the end of the day, you're on the hook to go report to your company. You're accountable to go report to your company or your CMO or your CEO of the value of your time and energy of your team's efforts. And so it's really hard to do those through lines when you have those, disjointed systems. And I think the other part of it that we talked about when you have this all in one is the speed that your team can operate on. There's the simple stuff, like you don't have multiple logins and you're not trying to learn multiple different interfaces when you hire someone new. But it also is, the time that it takes to, for example, spin up a A/B test on a landing page is a fraction of the time that it would take when you're using, let's say, one tool for your landing pages, another tool, Visual Web Optimizer, or whatever that tool is for your A/B tests, and trying to, get your developers to drop in the code in the right places to have all that come together. So just the amount of time it takes is something that our customers really enjoy. And because they have more time, they allow them to, create more assets, create better experiences, which, ultimately is what bubbles up into those leads and visitor results we just talked about.
You've highlighted a really important set of features, which I think broaden the meaning of the all-in-one platform, which, as you said, is you've got A/B testing in there, ready to deploy to the pages that are hosted on Content Hub. You've also got those SEO recommendations, and SEO data available to you. You've got personalization, and you've got the ability to analyze all of that with, with customer journey analytics, as well as traditional or statistical analytics, all of which solves for so many of the needs of a B2B marketer that's trying to evolve a website to perform better, to drive more pipeline. And the fact that they're all built right into HubSpot is a huge time save for them, and potentially a cost save as well, right? Which further improves the value proposition of HubSpot Content Hub, because you've gone to the effort to build all of that in. Have I missed anything that's built into the platform that's a tool that might typically be bolted on? Just trying to think.
There's a lot. Another one that comes to mind is Forms. It's a really simple tool, but sometimes you're using like a Forms plugin or some type of, Gravity Forms or whatever that is. And the reason, here's a simple example of why that's important. Here's like a little sneak peek of what's coming up at Inbound. When you have your CRM data powering your Forms builder and powering your CMS, now you can start to make more intelligent forms. I think you're going to see a relaunch of Forms coming up here in a few months, where you can intelligently craft the form filling out experience based off of the data you have in your CRM to make sure it's short, sweet, you're collecting the right information at the right time. And now leveraging things like AI, you can do that very seamlessly and very quickly, where you have this AI-powered form builder that sits on top of all your CRM data. And so that's just a little sneak peek, like directionally, of where we're going in Forms. But That's just one more example of these bolt-on systems that when you have your form builder living in its own world and it doesn't interact with your CRM data, it's much harder to build those really elegant, streamlined, high-performing conversion events on your site.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. For a long time, I've thought about what do I need in order to build a website that creates pipeline for a business? And, there's a bunch of things that are critical to that requirement. Forms that sends the data somewhere useful, meaningful, and plays a sensible role in the journey is key. And any platform that doesn't incorporate that is, not optimized for my use case fundamentally. So, being able to host content, have forms, deploy CTAs at scale, and collect the data. These are critical to the objective for a B2B website, and that's why HubSpot Content Hub and HubSpot CMS Hub before it were so well aligned to those requirements. Okay, there's things that you perhaps couldn't do as easily as taking a third-party plugin off the shelf with no validation or no security and no quality control and plugging it in to deploy a widget or a doodad to your website, but also, most of the time, you didn't need to do that anyway in order to produce the result you were looking for, which was the engaged buyer expressing their intent. So for me, it was always an easy way to say, well, I've got everything I need here, and the things I don't need, I don't care for. So it's a strong choice on that side. We've come around it as a topic, but the editing experience and the ease of editing for marketers, I think, is a key advantage of HubSpot CMS and Content Hub. You mentioned that it's part of the invisible in the sense that HubSpot's gone to great lengths to make sure that the user experience is intuitive and easy and painless. And I think another strength is the degree to which HubSpot's editing tools and design and development support can stretch to meet the requirements of different users. You talked about user experience of editing, and I think HubSpot is probably among best in class in terms of the editing experience it provides. Any particular reasons why HubSpot's done what it's done in that area, or why you think HubSpot's got it so right?
I think we heard from customers, and a lot of us felt the pain and working on other systems of just being kind of handcuffed on what you're able to do and not do, and how that slows you down, and the frustration in that, and trying to, again, kind of fight with the editing experience to get the work done that you need. And so, we've invested a lot over the last few years. We have an entire editors team that all they do is, we have an editors team, we have a modules and sections and templates team, and those obviously all work together. And so, we have multiple teams here at HubSpot in product that are really thinking about the editing experience for our customers. And, we sort of have those table stakes things that you just believe are a necessity, like the drag and drop editing, being able to easily move things around. But then you also have, a number of things that those teams are investing into, to make it easier to get started on certain things, for especially when it comes to starting to embed AI as a part of that editing experience and creating experience. And so there's things like our content assistant to be able to quickly create content. We now have a number of ways that you can also, the other area that we're thinking a lot about is extending the editing experience beyond just your core website. And so we just recently launched an editing experience called content embeds, where you get that same drag and drop, easy to use experience that you build all your modules or your widgets or your sections in HubSpot. And then you can embed those onto your WordPress site. And soon we're working towards a world where it's a JS embed where you can embed them anywhere. So it's right. You can manage your content in HubSpot and make content, so your source of truth of content, sort of HubSpot, easy to edit, easy for marketers. And if there's a system you're working with, let's say, we hear this all the time, especially up market, where maybe your marketing team has a certain part of the website that they manage and own, but then the rest is controlled by IT, and you got to go talk to the IT department to make changes to their or the engineering department in product sort of owns portions of the site. this is these content embeds empower marketers to be able to own sections of a site where they normally historically couldn't even touch. And so
Right.
again, they have the drag and drop editing capabilities in HubSpot. They can move things around. They have all their files in one place that they can draw on so that you have consistency in brand and styling and all of that. And then they can be dropped into platforms that you historically maybe are like fighting with or having to go through IT to make changes on. So, it just goes back to our philosophy that we started with and our vision that we started with, which is like, we want to empower marketing teams to get their work done and not fight with their systems. And so that's why we've invested a lot into our editors, and we'll continue doing so as AI and as things like headless, marketer friendly headless, continue to become more and more important.
Yeah, that announcements about Content Hub really struck me as, in particular, in the way that Content Hub was becoming a platform that had multiple outputs, and CMS Hub was one of the outputs. It really was becoming a multi-surface, multi-use content platform that you could use to publish content to a variety of outputs. That has some similarities with headless. And truth be told, like a lot of the times that I hear headless as a requirement, it often isn't as much of a requirement as some would think. But there's an element of headlessness coming in there, isn't there? Which is where I can create and control content here, but you can deploy it there and have that separation and that control that's needed without going necessarily as far as a fully headless CMS solution, which isn't always needed. It's the flexibility of the editing experience that I really appreciate, and I think the fact that HubSpot stretches to meet the needs of so many different types of business, at different stages of maturity and growth and team size is wonderful. We in particular really enjoy and make use of sections, which you mentioned briefly, because drag and drop is amazing. It gives you the freedom and the flexibility to really organize content anywhere you want on the page. But with great power comes great responsibility. And we often see a need for consistency of application of brand within the content that's being produced. And we want to make it really fast and really easy for marketers to do that at scale. And so we leverage sections, which let us, in a way, lock down some of the drag and drop freedom into predefined uses, I suppose, predefined modules that have applied brand, typography, color, style, etc. And then we can deploy those sections to our clients, to their marketers, and they can build beautiful pages for anything they need really quickly and easily. But they never have to think about the space between elements, or the size of the font they're using. We can build that in to them. So that's been really, really powerful for us, because it means that we can give different businesses at different stages of the journey the right solution for them, in terms of flexibility, control, consistency, etc.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because anyone who's a designer listening, or anyone who's maybe in charge of brand, or is a director of marketing, or a developer, you're probably, when you hear like, okay, I want to give the keys to the kingdom to the marketing team to make changes, you're probably like, ooh, I'm not sure if I want to quite go that far. And you're right. Like, there's this tension between how flexible do you want to make a system versus the speed that the users using that system are. And you go one direction where you have complete customization and complete flexibility. And then it's like you said, there's so many choices, so much flexibility, you get bogged down into the details. You can't work quickly. Then you can go the other where everything's locked down, and then the marketing team can't make whatever changes they need. And so again, going back to one of the original things we talked about, we're not a developers or designers CMS, but we allow them we have the tools for them to be able to empower the marketing teams to get their work done, so that designers, developers can work on more sophisticated, more advanced type things. And one of those is there's this whole emerging area that we're investing a lot into, and I think we're going to hear a lot about it over the next 12 months from HubSpot, is content operations. How do we build very structured, streamlined workflows and systems for that teams to work efficiently within our content tools? And you already mentioned a number of those, giving developers the ability to determine what do we want to make drag and droppable? Shouldn't be everything. So like, let's
Yeah.
give them a space where the marketers can get their work done, but not start to push that line into too much flexibility. And so that's like a world. You get into in HubSpot, you build theme systems. And so you can build a theme system with predefined modules and stylings and brand guidelines, sections, so that there is this library of pre-built elements to use, so that the marketing team doesn't have to create it all from scratch, but you're also not having the marketing team kind of veer the brand and veer the experience on the website into like the wrong directions. You can give them sort of some system to work within. You have things like permissioning and governance, like what should the people have access to, what shouldn't they, what are the approval systems that we need to set up in place, so that when someone makes an edit, you have the proper review process to make sure that it's correct before it goes live. Like that whole world, as we're kind of terming it or thinking about it as content operations, is a place that if you look at what we've released over the last 12 to 18 months, there's been a number of things in there, and it's going to be a theme, I think, that's even bigger next year, as we have a entirely dedicated team now to just content operations and sort of this concept.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, such interesting points. And the way I think about it, and the way I encourage people who are considering HubSpot to think about it, is that like HubSpot really does provide different solutions to different teams and businesses at different stages of the journey. The right solution for a 2-man team is different from a 10-man team and a 50-man team. And
Exactly.
also, I encourage businesses to aspire to move up that chain rather than move down it, right? I think it's wrong for a business of 10 million turnover with 100 people and a 10 or 12 or 20 person strong marketing team to aspire to solve their website problems in the ways that a 2 or 10-man company would. And HubSpot can give you all of, so much more if you look at if you move up the value journey, the value chain with it, and exploit the features that it has, HubDB, personalization, as you mentioned, memberships, commerce, to build a richer, more involved, more effective buyer experience. And of course, you mentioned approvals, which I think is a really interesting area of development that's very, very valuable for customers of HubSpot Content Hub. Memberships and commerce, equally really, really interesting areas where you guys are continually evolving, redefining, making it easy for marketers to build out portals for their customers on the one hand, and B2B e-commerce experiences on the other hand. That's no doubt a key area of focus for you and the teams that you work with.
Yeah, I mean, there's teams on both. I mean, we obviously have Commerce Hub, which is an entire hub in and of itself. There's a kind of separate set from the website of functionality within there in terms of like quoting and invoicing and billing and subscriptions. But then, a component of that is, like you said, that B2B commerce side, which is, hey, I'm running an event and I want to charge money for it. How do I build an event experience on my website and then be able to collect money for the tickets that we get? Like that's something where when you have Content Hub and you have Commerce Hub, those two things can work magically together. Or if you have a subscription membership website, or you have premium content, that you want to, this is where those three things come together, right? We have another team that's dedicated to memberships and portals and building these like really sophisticated logged in experience type of experiences. And you can bring those three things together, right? So we've seen folks, one of them is G2, is kind of a Yelp for software. And they ran their entire Reach event. Now, this was back in, I think, 2020 or 2021. They built the entire event out on top of HubSpot, where they were using Content Hub or CMS Hub for, the experience someone would have. They were charging for tickets. And then once someone signed up, there was like a whole portal experience where they like got to interact with the content, watch the lives. They had embedded live streams. They had, over 50 hours of video. After the fact, you could log in and reference after. And so they built this entire elegant end-to-end experience. They did all the automation with Marketing Hub by pulling these things together. So I'm really excited for memberships personally. I think memberships and gated content is a really exciting opportunity for marketers as uh, things like search and chat GPT for answers and information start to commoditize your information. You need to find ways to create premium, creative, deep content you can't find anywhere else and generate leads as a part of that, and keep it somewhat hidden so that like the chat GPTs of the world aren't crawling that data and giving it away for free. And so memberships and those premium experiences through memberships is just a huge world of opportunity, and something that I think, at least on the HubSpot side, we're investing a lot into. And we're seeing a lot of partners like yourselves start to, already have been building a lot of really interesting experiences on top of.
Yeah. There's a near endless list of things we could talk about built into Content Hub, but a big part of the announcements focused on AI and the role of it in content creation and distribution, and its central position within Content Hub's feature set and value proposition. What to you are the things that have been, as you've been selecting features to pursue and talking to customers and monitoring the environment, what is it about AI in Content Hub and content marketing in general that has, you think, captured your imagination the most? What's got you excited as we go into this new generative AI Wild West?
I think there's three areas that we think a lot about at HubSpot in terms of AI. Probably a lot more, but three that come to mind in the context of content creation. And the first one is solving the blank page problem. So how do you go from a blank page to a draft? And whether that's a landing page, a blog, a podcast, you start with a blank page and you have to put together a draft. And how do we leverage AI to get to a draft faster, and also in a smarter way, so that at the end, the draft is a much better starting point for your marketing team and for your creatives to work from. And so there's the blank page problem we think a lot about. Then there's the efficiency problem. There's more to do and you have just the same amount of time and resources. And so how can we leverage AI to take all of the mundane and reduce the amount of steps and make marketing teams and agencies more efficient? Really going back to what we talked about separately, to free their time up to not do the boring, commoditized, tactical, very, very like tactical work, to free their time up to get more creative, to think more about engaging experiences you can't find elsewhere, to build those more sophisticated things. Really, I see AI as a way for us to shift where we spend our time into more interesting things that we know we should be doing, but we're just kicking the can down the road. Conversion rate optimization, personalization, really creative, rich campaigns. So I think that's another one, is just like efficiency. And then the third one that we think a lot about is insights. The reality is, like, I'm very blessed that we have a very large operations and analyst team here. I get to work with a lot of really smart folks that help guide a lot of our data-driven decisions. But the reality is most marketing teams don't have a dedicated analyst on staff to dig through that and surface those insights. And so, an area where AI can really be helpful is to help guide, like, surface things that they're seeing in the data and the customer experience, and help guide the decisions or areas to focus in on that are going to maximize, the results. And so just basically having someone, essentially having an analyst, a part-time analyst on your team, a college graduate analyst on your team to surface some of that stuff, and help guide the strategy, I think will be very, very helpful. And so from a broad lens, those are, the areas that I find most interesting. And we are now starting to develop tangible features in each one of those areas. And we can obviously get into the features and where they fit, but those are, I think, the broad strokes of what's interesting.
I think you put it really nicely there, and essentially created, in my mind anyway, a visual of a flywheel of value that AI can offer with the person at the center. And there's so much fear that AI will replace people, and some of that fear is no doubt fair, but for the most part, AI's best use is enhancing the capabilities of the people that we have already to do more, do it quicker, do it better, but without removing creativity, originality, opinion, and all the things that are exciting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're some way away from seeing HubSpot features in the area of insights reporting. That's probably something that needs work, because generally I don't think that's a very well productized area of AI application as yet, broadly, not just within HubSpot. But we've got in HubSpot, we've got AI content generation, which is really quite compelling and good compared to a lot of attempts that have been seen and tried, with the tone of voice, brand voice feature supplementing it. Those two things together work really rather well when it comes to creating content to fill the blank page and get you to the point where you can be refining and editing. We've been impressed by those two things, that's for sure.
Yeah, the brand voice, I mean, is a whole nother layer. I know we don't have a ton of time. We could probably have a whole other session on AI and content.
Indeed.
But one of the things we heard from customers is like when you use ChatGPT or you use another AI model, it tends to sound robotic. Doesn't really sound exactly how you would speak as a brand or you speak as an individual. And so having that brand setting, brand voice layer on top to enhance the output of that, to make sure it's closer to brand. Not only is that going to save your time from having to do a ton of re-edits after the fact, but it again keeps things consistent at scale. And brand voice is an area we're investing a lot into. We're exploring, how do we do multiple brand voices? How do we do brand voices by persona you're targeting, by geographic region? And how do you do brand voices by individual? So let's say, Phil, you wanted your own twist of a brand voice of how Phil sounds, and I wanted a twist of my voice on Luke. And so when we write blogs, that brand voice might slightly tweak the content to better fit the company brand, but also our own individual voices. There's like a whole world to explore there, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, that's what's the word? That's a multi-layered, onion, in terms of how deep you can go, how many levels of inception you can take, that personalization of brand voice too. And then of course we've got image generation and like text to voice creation, which are attractive, and I think have a lot of value and a lot of place. But I mentioned to Gabe, and I still think it's true, that there's a period of adjustment needed. We've either got to become more comfortable with what the output of those types of tool look and sound like, or they've got to get better to the point where we don't care, but we're still in an early adoption phase of we look for the oddities in those creations. We look for the weird artifacts in the images, and we listen for the unnaturalness in the sound. But it's a matter of time, right? One of those two things will change. People will stop caring, or they'll become imperceptible.
Yeah, and it's probably a little of both. In the short term, it's probably people not caring, certain group, and over time, I think trying to fight against it is like fighting against gravity. It's going to get to the point where it is a high enough quality that it is in you don't even think about it. Going back to the invisible, it's not even visible. And there's obviously like ethics things that there's again a whole separate topic on AI where we as HubSpot are being very proactive in making folks aware when something's been created by AI. So we'll put like created by AI in the footer whenever you use our content assistant and things like that. But yeah, I mean, and each one of those media formats are in different stages. Images across the board, regardless of which LLM you're using or which tool, it's like there's work to be done, but it's getting better and better. And I have no doubt that it will get to the point where it is good. And then there's the whole, how do we use our brand voice and how do we use our brand to inform the image output? That's another area brand voice team is thinking a lot about, is like applying brand voice to image generation, audio generation, and video generation as well. because that's even internally at HubSpot, our marketing team has not embraced image generation, because when you're doing it at scale at HubSpot, you need to make sure those images fit your brand. And so there's a lot of work there, just image quality, keeping it on brands, making sure that the images that are generated are from an ethics perspective, not doing things that you wouldn't want the image generation to do. Audio's definitely in a much further along state. I think the audio that you hear when you use, for example, our features, blog narration, where you can basically put in an audio version of your blog in a second into your blog for accessibility purposes, but also usability purposes, folks who prefer to listen to podcasts or audio. And then our podcast tool, which allows you to generate audio podcasts from a transcript. Those voices are much further along in terms of the quality. And when I first heard about these concepts, I was like, it's going to sound robotic. It's like I'm going to get too annoyed with the sound of it versus actually listening to the content. But it's to the point now, at least for me, where I don't get hung up on or distracted by the voice itself, and I can actually absorb the content that's being said. And obviously it's only going to get better to the point where, again, brand voice, we're thinking how do we create voices where we could have a Phil voice on there reading the blog to you. And then video is another one that's really interesting. Video is still pretty early days, but video is an area that at HubSpot, as we think of the next 6 to 18 months, is an area that we're investing a lot into. And you'll likely see some enhancements within Content Hub and Marketing Hub related to video, knowing that webinars like this are becoming the preferred format, knowing that short form content on TikTok or on even YouTube is becoming the preferred way that Gen Zs consume content. So video in general at HubSpot will, in general, as a marketer, if you're not thinking video, you should. And how you integrate video into your website, video into your content marketing strategy. And but in terms of tools to empower marketers and the AI side of making video easier and more accessible for a marketer to use and edit and create with, we're going to be doing a lot of that over the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay. Unsurprisingly, there's more excitement ahead, it sounds. For watchers of and users of Content Hub, there's more excitement to come. Never a dull day in this field is what I can think.
Why I'm still here after 10 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good point. It's kept you engaged and interested. So it must have something going for it. I share that view. Been running Blend now for going on 14 years, and still haven't had a dull day. So it's pretty good. Two questions, if I may, to bring things to a conclusion. One, we've done a pretty full tour of what HubSpot Content Hub comprises, which is what I hope to do, because it's a broad product. The new stuff is really exciting. The stuff that's not so new, it remains really, really relevant and valuable. Have I missed anything that you think is important in the context of the question, why is this a top choice for B2B marketers? Did we overlook anything that you think they should be aware of or observant for?
I mean, if you haven't, I know you did a deep dive into a lot of the feature set with Gabe, the product marketing manager for Content Hub. And if those listening haven't watched that, I would definitely watch that, because I think you're going to get a good breadth of all the features and functionality, from website specific features to some of the more content marketing specific features. I would say the ones we already touched on, brand voice. I think that's a really important one, especially with generative AI and how you think about leveraging AI as a part of your strategy. The other one that I think goes back to just how we're thinking about AI and saving time is our content remix tool. Remix being, you start with some piece of content, some sort of pillar piece of content. It could be this webinar we're talking about. It could be a blog or an ebook. And we know that as marketers, you have to get the most out of your content, give it some legs, find ways to repurpose it. And so Content Remix allows you to take that piece of content and repurpose it into a bunch of different assets to give it give it legs and do it quickly. But again, just to the draft format, and then you as a marketer can go in and edit and enhance and, you know, fine tune it depending on the channel you're going to distribute that content in. And so I think the remix one is really interesting. It is related to the website in terms of some of the outputs can be leveraged on websites. You can add them to your website, or you can copy and paste them into different places of your website, creates landing page copy, things like that from a blog post or from an ebook. But remix, I think, is a really powerful one, going back to like, how will we streamline our workflows to be more efficient so that we can invest the time in creativity and unique value and personalization versus, you know, taking a blog and spending hours upon hours, like writing out the little social tweets for that blog, you know, like give us a base starting draft from that, and then like make those tweets really creative and fun with the human side of it.
Yeah, content remix is really exciting. And I feel like it's either the icing on the cake or it's the cake itself, because it's kind of take all these different applications of LLMs and generative models and combine them into one almost. You know, it's a combination of individual things, which is another area where I expect we'll see a lot of development and a lot of excitement to come, because it's just the beginning, right? In terms of that journey, what you can do with that tool.
It's wild. It's wild. I'm like cheering that team on. I'm like, go, because there's so many cool things they can do, especially when you start thinking about remixing, leveraging the data in your CRM and the interactions you have, and how you when you start thinking about remixing things like video, and how do you remix things into video? Like, imagine taking this webinar and, you know, chopping it up into a bunch of video shorts in a matter of seconds. Like, that's pretty interesting. So there's a long runway. And like you said, I think the other challenge that we see when we talk to marketers is when they're starting to think about AI, is they start getting into this, I'm using a million different AI tools. I'm using one tool to create the text. I'm using one tool to create this. I'm using another tool to like copy and paste from ChatGPT to modify it. And you start to like having to jump from tool to tool to tool, none of them talking to each other. And Remix, as you mentioned, is a way for us to streamline that into a centralized workspace for the modern marketer with the best of breed LLMs. I know Gabe mentioned a resource in the last talk about we have a public resource that shows all the LLMs we're using behind the scenes for transparency. And so, you know, our product team is like busting our butts to be the best LLM, to do the best prompt engineering, so that you don't have to be, you know, a prompt engineering scientist to get really good high quality outputs. And then we layer brand voice into all the outputs. So I don't know, you can tell I'm like jazzed up about where content remix is going, and the power it's going to unlock, and the time it's going to save marketing teams.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just the beginning in so many ways. Final question. If people watching are convinced, you know, sold on the concept, what are the ways that they can get onto Content Hub?
Yeah, I mean, first talk to Phil and Blend. Go have a conversation with them, see what it looks like. You know, it's always great to see tangible examples of other folks who are using the tools and the results that they're getting. And the best way to do that is to talk to, you know, an agency who's been there and done that with so many different clients. They also offer free trials, so you can always spin up a free trial, kick it around, and see what it's all about. In terms of getting started, if we scope it down to just the context of the website, you know, you basically have a couple different paths. You have work with an agency, like I said, and those are really great fits for folks who have, you know, a vision for what they want and the flexibility they need, and you know, have a bit more of a mature organization that they need to build around. Like, agencies are really great strategic partners to think about how to architect the data, architect the governance and secure, you know, the permissioning and the content operations layer of that. And then obviously the design, the look, the feel, and all that. So that's a really great place to start. If you have a more, you know, simple, you're a smaller company, you're like just getting started, we have a whole, you know, set of themes in our marketplace that you can go explore too. And so I know Blend participates there. So there's like a ton of stuff that you can explore in the marketplace is like just a starting point. You know, trade-off is, you know, you kind of get what's out of the box. You know, there's some flexibility built in, but, you know, if you really have more sophisticated needs, you probably need to be working with an agency to go through that. So I think those are probably the two. Agency obviously also can help with all the data migration and the integrations and all the, the architecture, the informational architecture syncing between, if you are using another system and things like that, which again is all really, really important work to do.
Yeah. Between migration and marketplace themes and agency services, there's a solution for every, maturity of business and every type of business, just as there is on HubSpot.